Hi, welcome to Infodumpies. My name's Brianne. My pronouns are she, her. I'm autistic, I have ADHD, and I have a journal somewhere that contains a comprehensive list of varieties of banana I would like to eat before I die.
Hi, I'm Violet. My pronouns are she, her. I have AuDHD, and British game developer Chris Sawyer helped me get over my fear of roller coasters.
That was very nice.
Yeah, no, I'm glad he did that. He doesn't know that he did that or is aware. He doesn't remember. The time vortex took his memory. It's a long story. We're not going to talk about that today. Don't worry.
Yeah, today we're going to do a special new kind of episode that if everyone likes it, and you know what? I'll be honest, even if they don't, will probably become a regular thing.
Yeah.
And it's a mini dump.
Just a little quickie.
We're not going to have this is not that kind of podcast.
No, well,
we're not going to do a quickie.
Just got to run in for a little mini dump real quick. It'll only take a few minutes.
So for this, Violet and I have picked 2 topics each that are interesting, but probably not enough for a full episode. And we're going to alternate between our little mini dumps about just some things that we're excited about.
Yeah.
Information we enjoy. A little mini dump.
A delightful smattering of information across the back wall, if you will.
Gross. Disgusting. Especially with what my first topic is.
What's your first topic?
You know what? On that point, I guess I'll go first. My first topic is earwax.
Oh, no.
Listen, I know it's... Okay, I think it's interesting that there are some things that... I guess it's not weird that genetics determine these things, but it's just interesting that there's so many things that genetics determine that are absolutely wild to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I know genetics make up who we are, right? But some things I thought was just like, well, that's just an all people thing. And it's like, no, there's actually several types of this, and you have a gene for that, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like, things that seem potentially useless to have a difference for, like people who can and can't roll their tongues.
Oh, yeah.
That's a genetic thing. If you can't roll your tongue, it's not your fault. You don't have the gene for it, right?
Okay.
So if I told you to hold your hands together like you're holding hands with yourself, whatever thumb is on top of the other thumb that feels natural when you do that, like you automatically do. Some people do left thumb over right thumb. Some people do right thumb over left thumb.
Really?
That's a genetic.
And it doesn't have anything to do with, like, handedness?
I don't know if it has anything to do with handedness.
Interesting.
Which thumb do you have on top?
My right thumb is on top, and I'm right-handed.
My right thumb is on top. So it might have to do with handedness. But anyway, there's also stuff for, like, one of my other favorite ones is asparagus related. Some people do get weird smelling piss from asparagus. Some people don't. And there's also a gene that makes you able to smell asparagus pee. And some people don't have that one. So there are a group of people out there who have stinky asparagus pee after they eat asparagus, but they do not have the ability to smell it.
The cursed ones.
The accursed,
yeah,
yes.
Cursed.
Those are the types of weird genetic things that I feel like have no purpose. Like, the way people taste cilantro, like people who say cilantro tastes soapy, they have a gene that makes cilantro disgusting to them.
Yeah, God, I'm so glad I don't have that one, because I fucking love cilantro. I used to work at a taco place, and I put cilantro on everything. It was great.
Yeah, I love cilantro. I don't have that gene. But anyway, today we're talking about types of earwax as far as weird genetic things that I think are interesting.
I'm ready for you to wax poetic.
So there are 2 types of earwax. Nacho cheese and, no, I'm joking, dry
ranch.
and wet. Creamy ranch. Nacho cheese and creamy ranch. No, dry and wet.
Ugh.
Yeah. Sorry. They can come down in part to both your skin type and genetics.
Oh, okay.
So oily skin tends to have more wet, and dry skin, more dry.
That makes sense.
It's also linked to your genetics. So in 2006, there was a study published in Nature Genetics that looked at genes from 33 different ethnic groups. And they found that dry earwax is most common in people of East Asian and Indigenous American descent, and wet earwax is more common in everyone else.
That's interesting.
For me...
Tell me about your wax, baby.
Let me tell everyone about my earwax. I have dry earwax. So that means my genes for earwax probably came from my Puerto Rican side of my family. The quarter of me that's Puerto Rican is part earwax.
It's part earwax. So I feel like mine's kind of somewhere. Somewhere in between, kind of.
You have wet earwax. Listen, I don't
do?
want to be a gross couple, but I know you have wet earwax.
Okay. I guess I don't have I don't interact with other people's earwax enough to have a frame of reference for what dry earwax really is.
It's just flakes. Just dry flakes. Almost like when you have dry skin and it's flaky.
Oh.
That but your ear, and it's not really yellowy. It's just like a beige.
Oh. Interesting. Okay.
That's what I have. Yeah. So if it's darker and wet and maybe even stinky, which I'm going to get into, you have wet earwax.
Okay. You calling me stinky?
So,
you saying I got stinky earwax? My wax don't stink,
maybe.
baby.
I haven't sniffed your Q-tips. I'm going into genetics.
Okay.
I'm weird. I'm not that weird.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So yeah, the quarter of me that's Puerto Rican is partly made of earwax. Wet earwax have smell. Dry earwax, not really. Because the same gene that controls both a person's underarm stink is the one that controls the type of earwax they make.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't really get body odor unless I'm like sick. So one of the ways I know, oh no, I think I'm coming down with something is if I'm stinky, right?
Okay. So the interesting thing about that, right? So I'm, for those of you who don't know, I'm a trans woman. Before I transitioned, I didn't realize it at the time. I was fairly stinky. I wore deodorant every day, but like I felt like that was necessary. Otherwise, I would be notably and like discernibly stinky within a radius around me, right? And especially if it was warm. But now that I have transitioned, I feel like extenuating circumstances aside, I'm not particularly stinky. However, if I do, get some exercise in there and I haven't put deodorant on, I give it a sniff, and this might be too TMI. I do get stinky, and I think more so than you do. Again, couples thing,
Yeah.
So yeah, I that kind of makes sense what you're saying.
And that is partly because the armpit stink you get is not your sweat that's stinky. Did you know that?
No.
About 98% of Europeans have wet earwax, right?
Uh-huh.
That also means they have a chemical in their armpits and in their sweat that bacteria that live on your skin will eat and then fart out body odor.
Oh, gross. I hate that.
Yeah, so when you have BO, that is bacteria farting out that enzyme.
I like
that
my
chemical
body just a little less now. Thank you.
Those with dry earwax, and for this part of the study, it was mostly only East Asian people that were studied. Majority of them lacked the stinky armpit chemical because of a variant to the ABCC11 gene. So I have dry earwax. I stink very little. So my earwax genes come from that side of that quarter of my lineage, and they're both controlled by the same thing, and I think that's so weird.
That is super weird. That I know that there's like stuff like comorbidities and things like you have this one like symptom or illness or disorder or whatever, and that can coincide with something seemingly unrelated, but usually it's like a little related. This feels like almost not related in any way, other than that it's a substance that your body is producing that is that's like the only relation.
Secretion.
Here. It's a secretion.
But yeah, that's my gross earwax fact.
Cool.
I don't know why. I think it might be partly being from a mixed ethnicity home and having a genetic mutation that actually affects my day-to-day life and how I do things. For those who have not listened to other things with me, I'm not going to assume this might be your first episode. I also have thrombophilia, which is genetic. So my blood clot too good. And I don't know, it's such a random genetic mutation that I became very interested to figure out where it came from. So when I learned I had thrombophilia, the family members who, were closer to me, they got tested for the same thing, because especially if you are someone who has a body that is fueled by estrogen, it can really affect your clotting. So several people on the Puerto Rican side of my family wanted to know, like, shit, should I go off birth control, like oral contraceptives too? Because that's what made me have my clot, because I didn't know I had thrombophilia. And they wanted to be sure. Not a single side of the Puerto Rican side of my family had it, right? And my genetic mutation is more common in people of Hispanic descent. So it's a really off chance that I got it from the white part of my family, even though it was more likely. So those
That's
genetic
really
things
wild.
are just interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are just really interesting. But anyway, that's my little dump about earwax.
Cool, thank you. I loved it. It was a little gross. I'm not gonna lie, but it was also very
no, I'm a
informative.
little gross.
It was more informative than it
Yeah.
was gross. So yeah. Are you ready for my first thing?
I am ready for your little dump.
So my first thing is not it's not really a gross thing. It's just something that I kind of came across that I found literally out of curiosity. Like, how does this work? So photography. Are you familiar with like the origins of photography in general? Like the old
Like tintypes and
yeah. The basics of that.
yeah.
Essentially, I'm not going to get too deep into photography specifically, because what I'm actually going to talk about is how color initially was added to photographs and the origin of actual color photography. Because originally, when you're talking about tintypes and stuff like that, right, you are essentially exposing, I believe, like silver molecules that are reactive to light to a plate coated in like a silver solution of some kind. And that is causing a negative image to form, which then you can develop into a positive image. The only problem with this, right, you're capturing a lot of detail because it is literally individual rays of light that are causing a molecular change on the surface of a piece of tin in this case. And so you have a lot of detail down to essentially like nearly a molecular level, and like the resolution of the lens that you're using and all of this stuff. So early photographs were very, very high fidelity, essentially. It captured a lot of detail, even if they didn't have a good way to expand those images up and view that detail without like microscopes, magnifying glasses, etc. And people were very impressed right off the bat with early photography. Which, by the way, so 1839, photographs were seen for the very first time. People were very excited. They were like, this is amazing. It's like an instant painting with incredible detail. But why no color? They couldn't really understand right away why it can capture a scene with such detail, but fail so completely to record any color information. And that was something that was really puzzling to a lot of people before we had a broader understanding of how light worked. But immediately, people began searching for a means of getting color on stuff. And believe it or not, for the first 200 years of photography, they just painted it. They took a photograph and
I believe that.
What's that?
I believe that,
Yeah. They took a photograph, like a tintype or an ambrotype, a daguerreotype. There's a whole bunch of different types of early photography you can look up. But it's basically you are exposing very briefly light to a light-sensitive material, and it is producing an image. Those images, though, are always, in this case, black and white, because light itself is not, like, the molecules that are being reactive in this case don't care what color the light is necessarily. It's reacting to any light. And so that's why the photos were in black and white. Now, for the first 200 years, it was all hand-colored paintings, basically. And in 1851, there was a guide released called A Guide to Painting Photographic Portraits. And the headline, or not the headline, but like essentially the beginning of that guide is essentially, when the photographer has succeeded in obtaining a good likeness, it passes into the artist's hands, who, with skill and color, give to it a lifelike and natural appearance. Which is like,
okay, I have a little thing I learned the other day
oh yeah,
to add to that for the person who paints it.
Yeah.
So I've been on a kick watching Welsh twins content on YouTube.
Yeah.
So they're chaotic British twins, and their channel together is chaotic, but they have their own individual channels. One does makeup, one does skincare.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a skincare slut, so James Welsh, I watch his skincare channel. He has a degree in like photography and marketing and basically Photoshop, right?
Yeah.
Did you know back then the people who painted those were also doing like proto Photoshop to those pictures and doing things like making waists smaller.
Yeah.
So when you see those old photos and you're like, how does this bitch have organs? That waist has to be like a 13-inch waist. That was not her waist.
Those are edited, yeah.
Someone literally had to go into the negative and slice away pieces and paint in gaps.
Yeah.
I saw another one where someone had a bunch of freckles and someone individually like flipped the image to where the freckles were white and used a graphite pencil on the negative to fill it in to match the gray of the paint of the picture, right?
Yeah.
And it's wild. So those people who did that were working on negatives, very tiny negatives to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
They're using like a microscope sometimes or a magnifying glass with like a single hair brush to make these modifications. Or in some cases, like you mentioned, physically modifying the image by cutting a piece out, moving it, and then reassembling it from whatever film was being used. So yeah, no, initially photography was considered like only part of the art of taking photographs. Photography was you take the photograph and then there's a whole other field which is painting photographs, which I think is really interesting. And a lot of those early painted ones have a really interesting and distinct look to them that I think is really like interesting. And I wish there was more. There is some kind of people that use that kind of technique nowadays, but I feel like the time period, there's a really hard to capture look there that I think is really interesting. However, 200 years after photography was invented, or rather before that even, 1666 is when people start to realize, and this was before like photography, long before photography, or Isaac Newton was the one who realized that sunlight is actually a spectrum of colors. That was known, but they didn't really have a good understanding of how that applied to photography necessarily. 200 years later, fast forward, 1861, a young Scottish physicist, James Clerk Maxwell, he conducted an experiment to show that all colors can be made, and this is mostly true enough for this purpose, all colors can be made by an appropriate mixture of red, green, and blue light, red, green, and blue light. And essentially what he did in order to take the very first color photograph ever, and in my opinion, this is super clever, Maxwell made 3 lantern slides of tartan ribbon like Scottish tartan, so like a cloth with that pattern on it, and it was tied into a ribbon, right? And then a lantern slide is essentially like a translucent photo, essentially, that can be overlaid over one another. He did this using 3 separate lanterns, each equipped with a filter of the same color the images had been made with. All of this he then projected onto a screen. So basically, he took 3 photos and put them onto this like translucent film to have a lantern to project it on a wall, basically, right? Each of these photos was taken with a filter, a red filter, a green filter, and a blue filter. So it's red, green, and blue are the basic 3 colors that at the time they identified that light is made up of, which we've later since learned there are colors that you miss out on if you only use basic red, green, and blue. But it's enough to get a very. So
wait, they thought primary colors didn't include yellow?
At the time, no. And even like CRT televisions later on in like the 70s and 80s and things like that, when they got color, those still just use red, green, and blue. And even modern day screens use red, green, and blue pixels. You might be thinking of printing.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of it as far as printing.
Yeah, so in printing, they don't use red, green, and blue because those colors don't come across accurately when printing, because you're not so much dealing with a light color as you are dealing with reflection color, and it's hard to get pigments in those colors. So what we do in printing is we have black, right, to get that dark tone, and then we have cyan, which is like a teal color. We have magenta, which is like a pink color. And
I knew that because it's not
yellow.
It's not pure. It's not pure red, green, blue like some people think in order to make those actual crisp colors.
Yeah.
But okay, I think I'm getting, for the same reasons we would use cyan and magenta, they're using green for something. Yeah, the light passing through it makes a difference.
Exactly, yeah. So
how it looks. Okay, continue.
Cyan, magenta, yellow, those will get you more accurate colors in printing. And also those colors are like, they cover the spectrum more, essentially. But for the purposes of the experiment, getting a solid red, solid green, solid blue filter was easier, and it will give you relatively accurate results. So basically, takes a picture with a green filter, takes a picture with a blue filter, takes a picture with a red filter. And those give him negatives they're black and white negatives, but only of the other two colors, because you've got the filter essentially blocking. And so when he makes the negative of those images, the only color that is on that image is the one that was allowed to pass through for the negative. I hope I'm explaining that right. So essentially, when he makes these lanterns and overlays the three images, the one color that was the filter is now the color that is being projected onto the image.
And the amount of light that was passing through helps determine the intensity. So when he has these three filters there, it gives you closer to accurate color when you kind of join forces with these negatives.
Exactly.
Because the pink isn't passing through the green. I mean, the yellow, the red isn't passing through the green one.
Exactly.
The blue one isn't passing through the green one.
Exactly. You're literally filtering what light is going onto your negative. And so when you then project that negative, you are projecting red light, or what is the red spectrum. So the lanterns have no color. But he does send that negative in a color filter so that the light coming from the lantern is red. And then for the blue negative, the light coming through that is blue. So he's reconstructing the colors of the light that it was able to receive from the image filter.
It's kind of like, it's making me think of screen printing. When it's multiple colors on screen printing, they have different screens for this is all the red I need, this is all the blue I need, this is all the green I need. And when you put all of them together, now you have the entire picture and all the colors are what they're supposed to be.
That is almost exactly it. He just did that with light instead of ink.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool too. That's why I wanted to do a little mini dump about it. But yeah, that's how the first color photographs were made. And for those at home, this is actually something you can do if you have some filters or some translucent green saran wrap and translucent red saran wrap for Christmas and blue, whatever. If you can get something translucent to act as a filter in each of these colors, you can do this at home if you have those filters and Photoshop. You just filter the photos that you take, one each, from the same position. So ideally, don't move the camera. Take one picture with each of those filtered colors. You take them into Photoshop, and then you just remove any colors that aren't that from the layer. You merge them back together with each of those layers colored in the appropriate color. And then you have them set to multiply in Photoshop. If you know Photoshop, you know what I'm talking about. And it will add the image back together in color, even if you took a black and white photo originally.
It'll probably have more of a vintage photo look to it as far as the color goes.
It really does. And
that's cool.
Yeah, it gives it a really unique image that I would love to try and do this with a black and white film photography camera at some point.
I was going to say, can we experiment with one of your film cameras?
Absolutely, yeah. I would love to do that. For those who don't know, I have a sometimes hobby in film photography. But yeah, I would love to do that at some point and just set up a still life. Obviously, this is a really hard technique to reproduce for anything moving or living because you have to take 3 images with 3 different filters in the exact same position. Fun fact, if you took a red image and a blue image and you left out the green and you offset them slightly where the camera position is when the photo's taken, you get 3D. That's stereoscopic 3D. Exactly. So yeah.
Very cool.
That's a fun little mini dump for you there.
Thank you. That's so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That was just my first one too. I got another one in the bank. What's your second one?
Okay, my second one. So if anyone listened to my episode about tea companies run by members of cults, you heard that I am just very interested in Scientology, not as someone who wants to participate, but just as this is the most successful cult of all time, right?
Right.
I have consumed every piece of popular media I can get my hands on about Scientology. Not the books Scientology puts out, just information about them.
Right. The Scientology meta.
Yes. So there are certain companies that Scientology owns, and I thought that I knew about all of them, right? You remember ABC Mouse? They would have commercials in the late 90s, early 2000s for abcmouse.com.
I think so.
Like educational games for kids.
Oh, yeah. No, I think I know what you're talking about. It's a vague, fuzzy memory, but yeah.
Scientology.
Huh. No kidding.
Scientology owned that. So you'll imagine my surprise when I learned that the fucking Neopets,
Oh my god.
the fucking Neopets
Jesus Christ.
were
Neopets,
owned
really?
were owned by Scientologists. So I should say the creators of Neopets were not Scientologists. The people who created the concept and sort of the lore and stuff were not Scientologists.
Okay. Well, that's good to
But when they started picking up, they got basically bought, right? Like, you want to run this company, you designed the game, we're the corporation that's going to make you money off of Neopets. So they had a CEO, and in the early 2000s, the CEO used a business model that was trademarked by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called Org Board, and it was used to run the company.
Orc board for orcs.
Org,
Oh,
O-R-G.
sorry.
Oh, God, if it was Org Board, that would be great.
That would be amazing.
He also tried to integrate Scientology teachings into the game. So the CEO's name was Doug Doring.
Doug Doring?
Now, D-O-H-R-I-N-G.
Like,
now, this gets
like a
even
bad word for a
deeper.
donut?
This gets even deeper into interests of mine, though, because if you are also a fan of Veronica Mars, Doug Doring, the Scientologist former CEO of Neopets, is the father of actor Jason Doring, who played Logan Eccles on Veronica Mars.
Oh,
You might not know the importance of this, but it's very important.
that's wild.
It's important to me. It's important that I know that.
So I actually have a weird Scientology fact that I know that you may not know.
What?
So have you ever heard of Mr. Jim's Pizza?
No.
So Mr. Jim's Pizza is kind of, it's like essentially like a lesser known Papa John's kind of thing. But my older brother used to manage a Mr. Jim's Pizza, and for several years he worked there. And he kept telling me all the time, like, yeah, we have a fax machine in the back because it's an old school company. And every now and then it'll just randomly print out a flyer for like Scientology propaganda. We don't know why. And then I remember at one point he said, "Hey, I found out Mr. Jim's Pizza has a page on their website with Scientology information."
Oh, God.
If you Google search Mr. Jim's Pizza Scientology, it'll take you to that page where it's just a bunch of propaganda for Scientology. So my life has been personally infected by a Scientology company.
Well, mine has too. My childhood has been wrecked because they tried to take Neopets from me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the Org Board, which is their business model,
Mm-hmm.
upholds the highest of Scientology's own ideas of ethics. I've already said Scientology has, like in a previous episode, I've said Scientology has their own sort of hierarchy of ethics that are not actually ethics. It's just what they deem are important.
Right.
The highest level, because if you are off ethics, as they say, that's when things like you start getting sick. So you must be off ethics, and that's why you were able to get sick. Or they can say you're off ethics and you get some sort of manual labor punishment for it. Something like that.
Wild.
So the Org Board upholds Scientology's ideas of ethics, which they read more like the Ferengi rules of acquisition than anything remotely ethical, because the highest level of ethics is affluence, it's profit.
My God.
So that's the kind of mindset that was going behind Neopets in the early 2000s. Org Board basically says that if anyone gets in the way of your plans as an organization in regards to making money, essentially, you must retaliate by any means necessary to make sure that they don't.
Good God.
Yeah, because, well, that's unethical if you don't, to them.
Jesus Christ. If anyone stops you from making money, you must stop them by any means necessary. Jeez.
Which is what Scientology does. Like, they live and die by that. So, the original creators of Neopets, Donna Williams and Adam Powell,
Mm-hmm.
they had no idea of the CEO's beliefs.
Oh.
Until he started filling out the corporate office with more like-minded Scientologists.
I see.
So there would be a new person, and they would look up the new person, like the new hire, right? And they would be like, oh, if you look them up, it also, stuff about Scientology comes up with this new person again, too. Because they were just trying to see who this new person was, right? And they're like, another Scientologist, that cannot be good. And they were like anxious about it. What are the odds, right? They did everything they could to make sure there wasn't a full takeover. So they never mentioned to him that they noticed the Scientologist trend until a new hire was pressuring them to bring Scientology teachings onto the Neopets site. So they wanted to use Neopets to indoctrinate children into getting into Scientology.
Oh my god. Yeah, that sounds right. I'm not surprised, just disappointed.
Like, yeah. So they were like, we gotta get rid of this woman.
Yeah, no kidding.
They're like, that's a hard pass. No way.
Absolutely.
We gotta get rid of this woman. After all of that, they ended up being sold to Viacom in 2005. And the org board methods and all of the Scientologist employees were scrapped. So I know they've recently revamped Neopets. You're safe.
Okay, good.
You're safe. Your children are safe. Everyone's safe. Enjoy Neopets.
Neopets is safe.
Go eat all of the omelets in Neopets.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for letting us know that it's safe now. That is wild. Scientology is...
So what do you have for me?
So my last thing, and what's
our final dump?
Yeah, final dump of the day. You should take, a couple a day at least. So my final thing is something that I very heavily considered making a full episode, but I was like, right on the fence about it. Might go a little bit over, but it depends on kind of how in the zone I get. But we'll see we'll feel it out. My second thing.
I should preface this by saying she's already told me if I talk about this too much, you rein me in.
Yeah, feel free to cut me off, rein me in, what you need to do. Because this is something that's like, I feel like there's a huge fan base around this. I won't keep you in suspense much longer. What I want to talk about is the Roller Coaster Tycoon series. And that's a video game series.
For an audience of autistic and ADHD people, I think you're going to be hitting home for a lot of people.
Okay, cool.
I feel like both neurotypes are like, fuck yes, Roller Coaster Tycoon. I have not played. I feel like I have not played a bunch of video games in my life. Like, I enjoy certain ones and I usually stick to them. But like, even I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Yeah, no, Roller Coaster Tycoon is an amazing series, and there's a lot of people that are huge fans of it, even to this day. The developer of Roller Coaster Tycoon is not a big company. It's not EA. It's not whatever. It's one dude, Chris Sawyer, who is a British video game developer. And as I mentioned in the intro, he helped me get over my fear of roller coasters. So Chris Sawyer is an independent game developer. I think I called him British. I don't think he's actually British. He's Scottish. I apologize. Two different things. I'm bad at geography. My apologies.
Whenever you send, hey, Scottish listeners, whenever you send your hate mail, make sure it's to Violet.
Yeah. Straight to me, please. It's understandable. Yeah. But yeah, Chris Sawyer is an independent game developer based in Scotland, specializing in constructional, strategic, and simulation style games. He is still working in the games industry, albeit he is kind of nearing retirement age at this point, and considering his legacy, it's understandable. He started making games in 1983, writing games in Z80 machine code on the Memotech MTX home computer, and then on the Armstrad CPC series home computer. What does all that mean? Basically, Chris started making games in machine code or assembly language, which is you are writing code to tell the hardware components what to do directly. You aren't running software to tell the hardware what to do. You are saying, hey, CPU, run these mathematical problems for me. Like that level. It is literally the most, you can't get a more down to earth, bare bones programming language than assembly code. And that's what he started making games in. From 1988 to 1993, he was working on PC conversions of games for the Amiga console. And he was also involved in a whole bunch of really well-known game projects, including something called Virus, Campaign, Birds of Prey. There's some dinosaur game called like Dino Dini's Goal. Not familiar. And then something y'all probably know more recently, Frontier Elite 2. That was in the 1993. And since 1993, he has been developing games on the PC, and the first of which, since that point, he's been like making his own games, was called Transport Tycoon, which was released through a company called Microprose. And he was extremely clever when he did this. He made essentially a really, really sharp contract that said, I still own all of this. And he's like, I own all of the rights to this still. You're just helping me produce it. And he was very strong in setting a line there, so that even to this day, Microprose does not like own. I mean, I think they have since bought like more of what was going on, but he's very shrewd in that regard in terms of like business deals. But anyway, Transport Tycoon was essentially like a city like public transport simulator game. Where you've got boats and planes and buses and trucks and cars, and you're building highways and infrastructure and things like that in a sim. And that was fairly popular, and it came out with a deluxe edition. It was popular enough for that. His second big project was Roller Coaster Tycoon, which he actually worked with Hasbro on, and that blew the fuck up. It came out in 1999. Roller Coaster Tycoon was an amazingly incredible game. The amount that it was able to do was shocking, considering it was still built in assembly language. Literally, he coded it in just like numbers and symbols and letters, telling the hardware what to do. And because of that, to this day, you can still run Roller Coaster Tycoon on pretty much any computer that can handle processing the
That's
information.
wild.
Yeah, it is very like it's not like bug free necessarily, but it's very well made. It's very functional. It has like so much that you can do with it, and it was made by one dude. It is wild. He has a website, chrissawyergames.com, where you can go see like all kinds of information about this and the history of this stuff. That's where I'm getting almost all of this information. But Roller Coaster Tycoon was really amazing in that even like the graphics and things were made in like an assembly code based image creation thing. And every single animation in Roller Coaster Tycoon, I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Roller Coaster Tycoon is a game where you make roller coasters and a big theme park. To give you a brief list of what you can do in this game, as brief as I can, there's a story mode and there's a free mode. You have a theme park is the idea, that you can terraform, you can modify it, you can add lakes, rivers, trees, valleys, you can shape it, move it however you want to do. All of this costs money, of course, but you own a theme park. You can name it, you can change how everything looks and works and feels, all the sounds and everything. And you have guests that come in randomly, and each guest has a set amount of money that they come in with. They have their own personality and moods and things that they want to do. They have likes and dislikes. They have individual desires. You can follow them around the park. You can pick them up and move them places. Every single individual guest has a name, and there's so much detail here. And there's actually some Easter eggs where you can actually rename guests to other names, and they will get like special actions in a few cases, and you can find us on the website if you want to try it. But like there's, for example, I think if you do like Chris Sawyer, the person will like only go on go-karts and that's it or something. And they'll always have a great time with it or something like that. But you can set the entry fee for your park. You can set prizes. There's refreshments. You have to set up infrastructure for trash pickup and machine maintenance and everything. And all of this is done with full animations and custom sounds and everything, all by Chris Sawyer, which is absolutely mind-blowing. And every animation that you see is like essentially hand-painted frame by frame. Every single animation in the game. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. So when you have a roller coaster running around, like going at all of these different angles, twists, turns, loop-de-loops, everything, every single frame, every single frame at every single angle of every single ride in the game was made one at a time. It's bonkers to think of the scale of what this guy did. Like, I mean, it's amazing. You
Yeah,
can.
if you haven't played it, I know we have listeners who are on the younger side.
Mhm,
If
mhm.
you can find if you can play Roller Coaster Tycoon, I think you will enjoy it if you are someone who enjoys stuff like Animal Crossing and Civilization and Sims
Oh
and
yeah,
Stardew Valley and stuff. This is up your alley.
yeah. So I actually have a way for people to play it if they want to. I believe for free. There is an open source community project called OpenRCT2, Open Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. And it essentially, they took Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, which is often seen as like the primo version. Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 1 was great, but he was a bit rushed towards the end in development, so there were some bugs and things like that. Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 is built off the same infrastructure, but just has more and it's better.
Yeah.
And so if you get RCT2, you should be able to just essentially play the game for free. And like I said, it runs on basically anything, which is wild. So highly recommend that. There might be a bit of extra setup because it is an open source project. It's really, really cool. It's an amazing game, and you can do so much in it. And one of the things that really like captured my imagination, and so when I was young, I had a fear of going on roller coasters and kind of heights as well, but mostly of like roller coasters. I was just scared. I didn't want to go on them. I was like, what if something bad happens? Just anxiety, general, young kid anxiety. This is a scary thing. I can't handle it. And then I played a whole bunch of Roller Coaster Tycoon, and one of the things that happened was, at the moment, I live in Texas. Rip me, apologies. We both do in Texas. We're in hell. But one kind of cool thing that we do have is we have Six Flags over Texas. Roller Coaster Tycoon, specifically Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, I believe, has real life roller coasters exactly as they're meant to function built into the game. You can get the Texas Giant, I believe, roller coaster, the wooden roller coaster at Six Flags over Texas. You can get that in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 and place it in your park.
Man, that thing will dislocate your fucking shoulder.
Oh yeah,
Allegedly. That
allegedly.
thing will give you a concussion, allegedly.
Yeah, yeah. It is a very big and fast coaster. But I went
And made
on.
of wood.
And it's made of wood. Wooden coasters are like a whole category of roller coasters all on their own.
Yeah, yeah.
And Chris Sawyer is such a huge roller coaster fan. That's part of why he made the game. He spends a lot of time just going around on different roller coasters around the world. Because, listen, I don't want to diagnose anybody. I suspect he may be autistic, and I suspect roller coasters may be a special interest of his, or just
Yeah,
transit in
you don't
general.
you don't make a game like that. So I'm gonna tell everyone a quick traumatic story. It's not that
Sure.
traumatic. About my fear of roller coasters, getting over that. I was also afraid of roller coasters, and when I was 10, I went to Disney World. My friend went with me. I was 10, and they had the rock and roller coaster, and I was afraid of roller coasters. My mom wanted to go on it. My friend wanted to go on it, and I was like, I don't want to go on that fucking thing. So I did not go on it. And in order to, I guess, teach me a lesson to
Oh
not be
Lord.
afraid of roller coasters, my mom, and keep in mind I was 10 to
Mhm.
give you an idea of what's about to happen, came back and said, the Backstreet Boys were on the rock and roller coaster and you missed them. You missed them because you were too afraid to go. Look, Nick signed my shirt.
Oh my god.
And she had someone from the gift shop sign her shirt as Nick Carter of the Backstreet Boys.
Jesus Christ.
I was autistic, and I guess I still am to this day. I don't know where the joke was supposed to be, but I was weeping because I was mad at myself because I missed meeting the Backstreet Boys because I was too afraid. And my mom
Oh.
thought it would be like, can we try to go again? I'd love to see the Backstreet Boys. She thought that would be my reaction. My reaction
Oh.
was, what's wrong with you? You could have met the Backstreet Boys.
Oh.
Um,
Oh.
So then
Poor
she
baby
told me the
Brianne.
truth, and then I got really mad and cried a bunch, but I did get a bunch of pins out of it because of the guilt and my only childness, and I got a bunch of Disney pins
Oh,
because my little autistic ass was obsessed with the pin collecting.
hell yeah.
But anyway, after that I was like, fuck, I'm gonna go get on all these roller coasters just in case the Backstreet Boys are on one of them.
Yeah, for me, it was I played Roller Coaster Tycoon so much that I was like, man, this coaster does look pretty cool. And I do now know the actual like failure rate and maintenance regulation, like how often it needs to be repaired because of the way the game works and how detailed it is. So it's probably fine. And I eventually did
I'll
go
be
on the Texas
fine.
Giant. Yeah, I did go on the Texas Giant, as well as I think it's called the Thundershock or something. It might have been renamed, but the big blue and green one that you can see from the highway. I went on both of those, and it was a lot of fun. And ever since I've been a roller coaster fan. So yeah, that was a lot of fun getting around that way. And then in closing, I have some fun facts about Roller Coaster Tycoon. So fun fact, the crowd sound effects, right? When you have a whole bunch of people, you start to get this like crowd sound effect that happens of like people talking and chattering and laughing and stuff like that. The Mission Impossible 2 contains the exact same crowd sound effect that was used in Roller Coaster Tycoon. It is, yeah, it's kind of well hidden, but if you watch the film really carefully, you will notice the same "come on, come on, come on" chant that you can hear in Roller Coaster Tycoon in amongst the crowd background sounds as it exists in the game. There's no connection. They just happen to license the exact same 30-second sound clip.
That's so funny.
Right? More fun facts. Roller Coaster Tycoon was originally just going to be a sequel to the first game, the Transport Tycoon, from in 1996, not 66, Lord. But basically, due to Chris's like interests in roller coasters, they abandoned the sequel and just modified the code to handle roller coasters instead of transport vehicles. Roller coasters' pre-rendered graphics mean that for some objects, there are literally thousands of different graphical frames to cater for different angles of every object. The object with the most graphical frames is the flying coaster car, which has no less than 2,832 individual graphical frames.
Which he did.
But yeah, Roller Coaster Tycoon, when it was in development, was nicknamed White Knuckle. Even when Hasbro became involved, the game was actually going to be called White Knuckle on release originally, but then Hasbro bought Microprose, and the Tycoon connection was really good. Tycoon being Microprose, they did the Transport Tycoon, and Hasbro was like, no, let's keep the Tycoon series going. Transport Tycoon was pretty popular. If not for Hasbro buying Microprose, we would know it not as Roller Coaster Tycoon, but as White Knuckle.
I like Roller Coaster Tycoon better.
I like Roller Coaster Tycoon too. It's really cool. Also, and this is my favorite fun fact, if you ever get a hold of a boxed copy of Roller Coaster Tycoon, the US version specifically, if you look on the back, there's a person with their hands up in the air screaming on a roller coaster, a photo. That is Chris Sawyer, the developer of the game.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep. Yeah, the photo on the back of the box.
It's me. It's my game.
Yeah.
I'm on a roller coaster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so cute.
I did this.
Right? So that
It's
is
like an author photo in the book jacket.
right, exactly. But yeah, that is Chris Sawyer writing a roller coaster called Megaphobia in Oakwood Leisure Park in Wales. That is my second topic there. I could go on a little bit more, but I think that's a good point.
Well, cool. I think our first mini dump went well.
I think so too. Thanks for letting me
And-
dump about roller coasters, taking a dump on a roller coaster and off of a roller coaster, and all of the splattering that comes with that.
Let us know if you like the mini dump format. And if you don't, keep it to yourself, I guess.
Yeah, if you don't, shut up. Shut up.
If you don't, keep it to yourself. I'm going to do it
Stop it.
anyway. But let us know if you do. Maybe I can incorporate it more often, because that is fun. Sometimes there's a topic where I'm like, this is interesting, but I don't think I have like 45 minutes to an hour's worth of stuff to talk about it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
So
kind of
there's
where...
so many things I go... Yeah, there's so many little rabbit holes I go down, like the Neopets one, and I'm like, that's interesting, but it's not fertile enough ground for a whole episode.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
I don't know. Thanks for taking a little mini dump with us, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.
David's housekeeping section. As per usual, Violet and I will have our social media details in the show notes. So if you want to look at our handles and go find us online and tell us hopefully chill things, please don't use it to go be mean. But if you want to see what we're up to on the interwebs, go ahead and check out the show details. Also, we now have a Misnomer YouTube channel thanks to our friend Taryn, who is one of the cast members for Misnomer, and it's going to be updated really regularly. They have a really cool plan to get episodes up on YouTube if that's a way that you like to listen to podcasts, and some shorts and some other cool stuff. Yeah, so go check out our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. And also, if you want to support us, you can tell people about the show. We don't pay for ads and we don't take paid ads. So the only way that we grow the show is by word of mouth. So you really help us out when you share about the show, when you tell a friend. So yeah, go tell a friend about it and maybe, I don't know, post about it in a group you're in or something. That helps us. If you're in a position to help us monetarily, you can go check out the Misnomer Patreon page, which we have a link to in the show details, where we do lots of fun stuff. I believe this weekend I'll be doing a Baldur's Gate stream. We played Monster Camp together last week. I do body doubling streams. We play Jackbox games together all the time. And that's just for $1 a month. You get to be in the Discord server where we have that. And you get rewards for any and all shows that we do now and will do for Misnomer. So I think that's pretty sweet. You can support our little gang of weirdos with just $1 a month. And at some higher levels on our Patreon tiers, you can get a cool shout out, like our friends Randy Lovings, Rachel Rachelson, Sewing Seraph, B. Trossler, Kelly Brennan, Smriti Singh, Helen Clifford, M. Mosen, and Lucy. Also, if you are AuDHD and newly recognized as such, or you are autistic or ADHD and you're wondering if you catch 'em, gotta catch 'em all, and are actually AuDHD and you want to talk to somebody, this is me plugging my peer support and coaching again, which there's a link to in the show details. So if you would like some one-on-one support and to talk to someone whose brain runs on similar software to you, yeah, go check that out. But that's all I've got for you, friends. We'll talk to you next time.